Who was the first anime fan in America? Today, it seems like everybody and their grandma watches anime, with anime conventions happening on the monthly. Cosplaying as their favorite characters, meeting like-minded people, buying that merch, going to interview panels to interview VAs, although I can't say how much they like that themselves.
You know your fandom, right?
It's none of my business, really. 30-something year old.
Don't you love your ship with Aerie?
Oh,
Bro.
Shut it down.
But this wasn't always true. Before these massive anime conventions that people go to today, there exists this unbroken chain of sweaty nerds watching Akira in their mother's basement that all collectively thought, wow, this is cool. I need to show my friend. But who was the first? Who was the first quote-unquote anime fan in America? And how did it even get so popular in the first place? What's up, Jubbas? Kai-kun here, and today I will be explaining to you how the anime fandom started in America. Now, full disclaimer, I can't say for certain who was the first anime fan in America. Sorry, yes, I know the title was clickbait, but I'm gonna be honest, it's kind of an impossible question to answer anyway, but I did get pretty close. I did some digging in my quest to answer this question, and I came across a peer reviewed academic paper about anime. I am just as shocked as you are that this exists, titled, "You Are Not Alone, Anime and the Globalization of America." And while it was a fascinating read on the effects of globalization in American culture, within it talked about how the first anime community started in America. And I gotta say, it's pretty fascinating. Now, for some of you anime buffs out there, you may know that the first anime ever released in America was Astro Boy by Tezuka Osamu. Or if you're counting anime movies, then it would be Magic Boy in 1961, which is about 60 years ago. Now, geez, you're probably thinking, okay, well, the first anime came out in the 60s, so that means the first anime fans in America were in the 60s. Case closed, video over. But there's just a slight catch. Because how can you be a fan of anime if you don't even know what you're watching is anime? Sorry. I won't be spoofing Vsauce. The phrasing setup was there. I just had to make the audio cut. Because up until the 1990s, it was normal for US editors to strip all references of Japan and anime they imported, like in Astro Boy. Kinda like when you had a house party at your parents' house and you cleaned up before they came home, or you selectively deleted parts of your browser history so your SL wouldn't see what you've been looking up. Which kinda sounds pretty dirty, by the way. Names were Americanized, Japanese letters were painted over with English ones, and Japanese references deleted. Like they were just given the Americanizing beam, like, pew! And all anime officially released in America was like this until the first Japanese import company in 1989 released anime in its pure, uncensored form, save for English subtitles or maybe dubbing it into English. But for these companies to import anime in 1989, they had to have fans who watched anime, which is like a catch-22. So what changed? What changed between 1990s and the 1960s where we suddenly had a bunch of anime fans in America? Well, that was when the first anime fans in America realized what they were watching is anime. And believe it or not, we actually have names and faces to this. Because the author of the paper mentions the first anime organization ever established in America, and that is, drum roll please, the Cartoon Fantasy Organization, established in 1977. Yes, Jubbas, nearly 50 years ago, the first anime community was established in America by Mark Merlino and Fred Patton. Now, the paper only mentions this as like a factoid, like a point you stick to a date, like, but I did my own research and I came across the academic equivalent of winning the lottery because I found a first-hand source of the actual history of the founding of the Cartoon Fantasy Organization written by the co-founder himself, Mark Merlino, which I will be reiterating in this video. So, according to Mark Merlino, the anime fandom origin story in America starts off when he was first exposed to a Star Trek convention in the early 1970s. Going with a friend, because why would you go alone? I mean, come on. And he was just absolutely blown away by it. Besides seeing the Star Trek costumes, fan recreations of the Enterprise, meeting like-minded people, his biggest takeaway was that this wasn't done for any money. This was all done for the love of watching Star Trek. And after attending this convention, he was hooked. He realized he wanted to go to more and went to several science fiction ones in the LA area, where he eventually volunteered as a projectionist for one, where he would play movies for guests. This is important later in the story. Now, Mark states he's always been a fan of animation, starting off with Disney, which I think a lot of people can relate to, and then he branched out to anything that was animated, watching early theatrical cartoons in Europe, USSR animations, and of course the Americanized anime like Astro Boy. The point being that when he was in college in California, which is also the heart of the American film and animation industry at the time, he tracked down existing animation studios and was able to meet some of the great animators of his time, giving him insider access into the animation industry, where he finally met Wendell Washer, a storyboard artist for Filmation that was a fan of Japanese animation. But Wendell Washer, he just wasn't your average anime fan. He was an advanced anime fan, a collector. He had a bunch of old film tapes of Astro Boy, which had been off the air well over a decade at this point. And keep in mind, this is the 1970s, so having recordings of anything is pretty rare, let alone a device to record things. But what's more crazy was he was collecting Japanese anime, recording it directly off the TV that was being broadcasted on UHF stations in Southern California on the Japanese local networks. TV channels in Japanese meant for Japanese immigrants living in America. And the shows that aired on these channels were not old Americanized anime from the 1960s, these were recent productions from Japan. And Mark, when he saw this, he was just blown away. He was like, eh? Now, however, his anime collection was recorded on a very specific industry-grade piece of equipment not meant for the average American, because he works in the animation industry. But in a stroke of luck, remember I said earlier our protagonist of the story, Mark Merlino, volunteers as a projectionist for the sci-fi conventions? Well, it turns out the piece of equipment Wendell Washer was using to record anime directly off the TV, a Sony UMAC VCR 3/4 cassette device recorder? I don't know, it's old technology. Mark Merlino had the same exact piece of equipment since he's been running the film department for FilmCon, so he was able to borrow and watch some of these tapes at home. But not being content to watch anime by himself, on the last day of LostCon in 1972, he happened to have the same video player in his car with some of Wendell's tapes of Usha Raiden and Gera Roboto. So in a fuck it why not kind of way, he decides to screen some of the spare tapes in a meeting room at LostCon and garnered a crowd of about 20 people who were just fascinated by what they were seeing. So fascinated when eventually they were asked to leave the room, they set up in another spare meeting room and watched until they exhausted all the tapes Mark brought. After they stopped screening, one of the attendees walked up to Mark and asked him how many more episodes of the show he had in addition to the ones he showed us. And that's when Mark told him about Wendell's collection. And that attendee's name? Fred Patton, who later became a co-founder for the CFO. So after this fateful day in 1972, Fred Patton, eager to watch more of this boutique foreign animation, suggested they organize a meetup every second Saturday and do an informal screening of this anime at the Los Angeles Science Fiction Society Clubhouse. To which I assume Fred Patton is a member of it, because why else would he recommend meeting here at this clubhouse? And Mark Merlino agreed, thus starting the tradition of them and a few others, eventually, watching anime on the second Saturday of every month with the boys! And they did this over the next 5 years, amassing a core group of people. When they exhausted Wendell's collection, they worked on sourcing new material for their screenings. They got into contact with other anime collectors in America, they started recording anime from the local Japanese networks themselves, and even a few of them established contacts in Japan, and they started a tape exchange, exchanging American tapes for Japanese tapes. Which is like so crazy coming from a time with the internet, because this took like months sending tapes over the mail, and we just do it in like 5 seconds over the internet. The point being, this all culminated in 1977 when Mark Merlino and Fred Patton and others decided to finally formalize their screenings into an official club, that being the Cartoon Fantasy Organization. Ladies and gentlemen, we got them. Woohoo! Now, fun fact, apparently the club was almost called the Animation Fantasy Organization, but believe it or not, the term animation was considered too insider, too niche for typical fans, so they kept it to cartoons. Hey, have you ever heard the Animation Fantasy Organization? The anime what? Bro, what are you even talking? Ah, shit, I knew we should have called it the Cartoon Fantasy Organization. And over the next several years, the CFO blew up, expanding its chapters all throughout America, inspiring the founding of adjacent anime clubs as well. And by blowing up, I mean it's still super niche, but now it's a bunch of niche clubs all around the country compared to just being in California. During the early 1980s, the CFO had some major guest appearances at their club, such as Tezuka Osamu, the literal father of TV animation himself, and they even have a photo of them meeting him, which is just as crazy. And then they also have Fred Ladd, who did the US adaptation of Gigator. Now, being that this was the late 70s and early 80s, the internet didn't exactly exist yet. I think it was still like a military technology, I don't know, like DARPA or something that made this. So funnily enough, clubs started developing an elaborate network of transferring anime around to their different chapters across the country. Club chapters would re-record anime and send it off to the local chapters, and local chapters would then re-record it and send it off to their local members, who would then probably show it to their friends in their mother's basement. Going full circle. Which would be like quite funny, imagining being the fan that got like the 23 recording of an anime episode. Like, God, the quality must have been so shit, like a re-uploaded YouTube video. And on top of this archaic pre-internet way of transferring information, there was this one absolutely insane thing that, thinking about it, that early anime fans did, or should I say didn't do, because all of these anime tapes that were being sent around the country that go to anime clubs where then people would sit around in a room and watch this all together, yeah, they were only in Japanese. Because like I said earlier, a lot of these clubs were getting their anime copies through sources intended for Japanese audiences who speak Japanese. And obviously a lot of these members at these clubs do not speak Japanese, and for the ones that they do, they speak it poor at best. So how did they get around this? Well, that's just their secret, because they didn't understand anyway. While some were just satisfied with the visuals of the anime, some started guessing the dialogue of what was being said on screen, or for the people that understood Japanese, tried to translate in real time, which honestly was probably just as accurate. Apparently the paper states like some of these clubs would like have some of their members walk up to the front where the TV's playing and just make up English dialogue on the spot to make it more like a performative kind of like way or whatever. Hey man, like your vibes, but do you like cartoons? Yeah. Well, I go to this cartoon meeting every Saturday where we watch some foreign cartoons from Japan. Pretty underground, super low key. You interested? Yeah, man, sounds chill. I'd love to check it out. Alright, we're here. Make yourself at home. He's clearly talking about the Kanojo. He wants to date the Kanojo. Bro, you are so full of cap, man. Just stop. Oh, he said, where is the bathroom? He said, where is the bathroom? Yeah, so like, isn't it so cool we don't understand anything we're hearing? Yeah, for real, dude. I mean, I just like love the pictures that are like playing on the TV. They're so colorful. Yo, you have free food? Yeah, man, help yourself to a plate. Oh shit, I love this place. And all of this fan activity culminated where it made sense for companies to import anime in the early 90s as pure as possible, only adding subbed or dubbing it into English when necessary. And with the internet being in a now usable format at this time, the anime fandom just absolutely exploded, going from kind of a very ultra fringe, occultic like club meetup to like mainstream, eventually leading to the modern anime fandom we see today, complete with inappropriate interview fan questions and all. So what happened to the cartoon fantasy organization and clubs like it? Well, they just kind of died out with the internet being replaced for online communities like we see today. But before you go, there is one absolutely insane thing that I've glossed over this entire time in this video, because I just find it so absolutely insane. Because the site I got this first person source from the co-founder himself of the CFO, the first anime fan club in America, was submitted to this news site called Dogpatch Press in 2020. A furry news site.
What the Sigma?
Yeah, so apparently Mark Merlino, who also goes by Cy Sable, would apparently go on and start the first furry communities in America in 1982 and 3. And the reason he submitted this article in the first place was because of his involvement in the furry community, and he wanted to tell how the furry community started in America, which is also tied to how the anime community started in America. Which means the anime fandom and the furry fandom like share a common ancestor in this country, like. And for those of you finding this hard to believe, if you take a look at the Cartoon Fantasy Organization mascot logo from 1979 and compare it to the one from 1982, you go, oh, now I see it. And this by no means is ragging on the furry community. I mean, honestly, like, cringe culture, like, come on, guys. Just do what you like. I'm just personally blown away by that these two communities have the same canon event in America. And without passionate people for animation like Mark, anime might have not as been as big as it is today, or even like a relevant subculture at all. Like if there was no anime, like something else would have filled the void, like Bollywood. Like imagine like Bollywood being as big as anime today. And honestly, with the bullshit I see in Bollywood movies, I wouldn't even be complaining. So in conclusion, I guess you can say the first anime fans in America, besides being the Japanese immigrants, because obviously Japanese is their first language, so naturally they would know about anime before anybody else does. I'm talking about people that don't know Japanese as their first language, were the people working in the animation industry in the 1960s. And the first organized anime fandom in America was the Cartoon Fantasy Organization in 1977, or 1972 if you count the screenings as like a pre-organization level. And these super nerds got the ball rolling, starting the anime fandom where it became what it is today, that we are a part of, that you are watching this video right now because you are so interested in anime. Which reminds me, since this is the end of the video, if you liked what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing. I hope to make more videos like this in the future, hopefully not behind a green screen the whole time. I'll be sitting on my desk in later ones. But anyway, consider liking and subscribing, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.